congratulate South Africa for chairing the G20 next year. And so it is important that the African Union Commission should be working hand in hand with the African Union to actually make sure that Agenda 2063 is a priority item on the agenda of Agenda 2063 of the G20. Africa has to be also on the UN Security Council. Just imagine 80% of the issues discussed at the UN Security Council is African problems. When we talk about disasters, but we are not the ones polluting the world. So the African Union should also be fully involved in the COP discussions. The COP discussions should also be held here in Africa. So a strong Africa has to be an Africa that is present on the global stage. We have to see that Africa has to be part and parcel of the global south, and this is what we have to do. And I'm going to make sure that our commission is going to work to ensure that Africa is part of the global south. Integration is a long-winded effort. It goes through solidarity. We are not working among ourselves. We are not speaking to one another as neighbors. We'd rather trade with non-African countries because we have non-tariff barriers, because our currencies are not convertible. Our currencies are not convertible. If I want to the future generation should not forget what our founding fathers actually had in mind when they were establishing the OAU, so that all those who are in Africa should continue to live the same dream the same dream. We inherited this continent from our founding fathers, and we have the Africa that we want. The Africa that we see is the Africa where we live in, and the Africa that we want is the Africa that we want to prepare and which we must prepare. And so there is a clear difference between the Africa in which we are and the African Union, which is our own home, the common house. And if the African Union Commission does not put in the right resources, the human resources and the financial resources, even the diplomats and the military, we will not get to where we want to be. And so I am of the opinion that it all depends on the will of the people to go beyond the challenges that we face today. We all know the problems of our African Union today. There are certain aspects that do not meet the expectations of the people. For example, the SACA audit that was prepared by experts proposing reforms that have to be undertaken. We also have reforms that were undertaken in 2016. So we need to take those reforms to ensure that the African Union can actually rise to the challenges. The regional economic communities also have a role to play. I went to COMESA for several years and actually saw the efforts undertaken by countries of COMESA and East Africa. And we see Tunisia, Egypt in COMESA as well. And this will continue. We have the Abuja Treaty actually defined gradual integration at the regional level and then the continental level. And I know we will get there. And I am going to work with the members of the next commission so that together we can actually make all of this easy. And lastly, I think we should also bear in mind, we should also think about the military bases, the foreign military bases in Africa, in African countries. Some countries have already started to take their own destiny in their hands in terms of their security. We should be brave enough. We should actually have that courage to make sure that we can actually stand out there as adults adults that can actually take their destiny in their own hands. Foreign military bases in Africa, we do hope that in a few years' time, those military bases will be a thing of the past, because this military base is actually a source of conflict. Thank you. Thank you very much, Excellency Randra Mandriato, candidate of Madagascar. Now we listen to Raila Amolo Odinga, candidate of Kenya.
Thank you. Well, I mentioned earlier on about the inter-African trade, which today stands just at 15%. Inter-European trade, on the other hand, stands at 70%. Inter-Asian trade stands at 60%. Africa trades more with the external world than with itself, wasting a lot of resources. Now, how did Europeans come from behind and leapfrog and overtake Africa? That is something that we need to ask ourselves. But here we need to now look forward to see how we can be able to make use of this huge domestic market that we have. We have a population of 1.4 billion people. And that is what has helped China. China did two things. One was to train the younger generation, the youth, so that they had a very highly skilled manpower. And when they liberalized the economy, the manufacturing units in the West rushed to China. If you go to China, for example, take the automobile, the Ford, the Jeep, the BMW, the Mercedes, the Toyota, the Nissan, they're all there in China. And because there was cheap, highly skilled, cheap labor. Secondly, cheap raw material. The raw materials which they were actually getting originally from Africa. And that is how China has managed to develop a 600 million people middle class. Africa can be able to fill the gap which is being left down there by China. To come together as Africa and create an African market which will be able to attract investors to come to our continent. Africa is the youngest continent in terms of population. 70% of our population is below the age of 35. That is a big bonus. It can be a bonus or it can be a curse. If the youth are not empowered, given requisite knowledge and skills, they become a drug to society, drunkards, drug addicts, and criminals. But empowered, they become a real source for wealth creation. It is a pity today that many African youths drown in the Mediterranean trying to seek greener pastures in Europe because you have not created conditions that can retain them here. Now we are saying that we want to create a situation where every African youth must be connected to the internet, and using the artificial intelligence and information technology, we can be able to give this youth opportunity to work anywhere in the world when they're staying here on the continent. This is something that we are going to address, empowerment of the African youth, and together with the African woman, so that we create a workforce that will be helped in terms of wealth creation on the continent. This will enable Africa to leapfrog and to catch up with the rest of the world. I'm saying that I want to be a vehicle to be used to help Africa to get there. We will work together with all the leadership in the continent so that Africa moves.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you very much, Your Excellency Raila Odinga, finishing us on the third round. And now we move into the fourth and final round, and I give my sister the opportunity to open the envelope and tell us what the first or the last question rather is. And ladies and gentlemen, as a form of a reminder, after this we have a quick break, and after the break each of our esteemed candidates will have 2 minutes to share their closing remarks. Fatima?
Dear candidates, your question is this one. The implementation of the key reforms at the African Union that were decided by the Assembly of Heads of State and Government has come to a standstill, and which has a negative impact on the structural stability and the financial viability of the Union, and also on the lack of the African Union to have an impact. Were you to become the implementation of these reforms, rationalize the programs of the African Union and strengthen its effectiveness in the long term?
Under the topic of implementing of reforms agreed under the Assembly Decision 635, the implementation of key African Union reforms decided by the Assembly of Heads of States and Governments has stalled, with an adverse impact on its structural viability and financial sustainability, and the AU's focus on a few high-impact public goods. If you become chairperson, what new approaches will you introduce to reinvigorate the implementation of these reforms, streamline the AU's agenda, and strengthen its long-term effectiveness?
Et j'invite à présent le candidat.
I'd like to invite the candidate from Madagascar to respond first. First of all, we have to begin by bringing back order to our shared home, the African Union. I think this is the highest priority. The mandate of the chairperson of the commission as a whole is last 4 years. So that is a very short period of time to be able to change from top to bottom what needs to be changed in terms of institutional reforms of the African Union. So one must begin by bringing back order. I did mention a short while ago the recommendations of the SACA audit. I also mentioned the reforms that have already been proposed in 2016. There would be other reforms. What needs to be done were I to become the chairperson of the union would be to review the documents, and one cannot forget history. One cannot ignore history. I don't think we could. We are at the end of a process. We are at the beginning of a new process, and the outgoing team did what they were able to do with the resources that they had at their disposal. And I would like to thank the outgoing chairperson of the commission, Mr. Faki, and his entire team. And were I to be elected chairperson of the commission, I would work, of course, with the chairperson, because it would be a lady chairperson. Now, these of reforms, and I also think, as I said a short while ago, that the organs of the African Union, beginning with the Conference of Heads of State and Government, but also the committee of the PRC, the Permanent Representatives Committee, with the Pan-African Parliament and the other organs.
Infrastructure, and I know the kind of frustrations that you feel working that way. I know that 93% of the resolutions that are passed by the heads of state of the assembly are never implemented. Now there's some of them are resolutions which were probably not necessary. Some of them are not implementable, but majority of them are just not implemented. Some have to do with the structure and management of the AU at the headquarters. I'm not trying to pass any judgment here because I know that Mr. Faki has worked very hard to try to make the organization move forward. The other one has been the issue of funding, which has been a major challenge, and look at other alternative sources of funding. When I was there as High Rep on infrastructure development, we came up with a proposal to set up an infrastructure fund for Africa, and using the African resources, because many of African countries have got a lot of money in sovereign funds, from which the AU can actually borrow without having to pay so much high interest And this will help AU actually to spearhead the process of constructing some of these infrastructures. I mentioned the Trans-African Railway Network, Lagos to Cairo, the high speed. Then you have got Beira in Mozambique to Lobito in Angola and Walvis Bay in Namibia. Then you have got the Lapset, which will come from Lamu in Kenya, running through South Sudan, Central Africa to Caribbean Cameroon, to create a land bridge that opens the interior of Africa and gives these landlocked countries in the continent access to the sea. So some of these are possible, but we need to think out of the box and ensure that most of these reforms which are being proposed are implemented. We were talking about energy, which is a very major issue. And we have got the Grand Inga in the Congo, which can actually power the entire continent with power pools, southern power pool, eastern power pool, central, western, and northern power pool. That will help us to lower the cost of energy in the continent. That would be a revolutionary change in the continent. Then you've got the connectivity, fiber optic connectivity, open skies, opening up the skies for movement of people, and then visas. To do visas is a big issue. Many African businessmen cannot travel across the continent without, because they don't have visas.
Excellency, I'm really sorry to interrupt you. Les 4 minutes se sont écoulées. Nous allons maintenant suivre.
We are going now to listen to the response from the last candidate for this round, the candidate from Djibouti.
Let me start by paying tribute to our heads of states who have endorsed those reforms in 2017. And then the champion for those reforms was His Excellency President Kagame, and he passed the responsibility to President Ruto. Now, there are a number of reforms that have already been implemented. We have to recognize that. The size of the commission, we had 10 commissioners, chairperson, deputy chairperson, and 8 commissioners, and it has been reduced. We have what we call a golden rule in terms of managing the staff and the personnel. I'm still waiting for the SACA program to be implemented. I hope that this hot potato will not wait for us, one of us, when we'll be elected. But I hope that the SACA process will be implemented. It is about the personnel, the staff. We have moved from a lot of short contract employees to a permanent contract. That's very important. If you want to create loyalty, you want to create the ownership within your staff and personnel, you have to make them happy. They need to have a permanent contract, and it is in the SACA program. Now, the biggest bottleneck of the reforms is the financing. Our heads of state said we will pay 0.2% of eligible import to the Commission. Only 17 countries, 17, are applying and abiding by that rule. It has to change. I'm not going to impose that on our leaders. It's not my intention, but I will advocate for it. It's very important to have, that particular issue of mobilizing and fostering financing be resolved immediately. Then, our experts, there is a unit in the African Union Commission called the Reform Unit, led by Mr. Makoko, a very able African expert. But there are so many reforms that have not been implemented. One of them is PAP, the Pan-African Parliament. It's still a consultative organ. When is the Pan-African Parliament will become a legislative organ? They have passed in 2014 a protocol. Only 15 countries ratified that protocol. And this is one of the major reforms that we have to implement. Then we have on the judicial sector, the Court of Justice, the Commission of Human Rights. Sometimes they are fighting on issues. The Court of Justice do not open its doors to nationals, to African citizens, to NGOs. They are complaining. I am hearing complaints about the African citizens with regard to the Court of Justice. And then they are fighting who is doing what, the Commission of Human Rights. These reforms have to be implemented. And the Bureau of Liaison, a liaison bureau, we have so many on the continent. That's double use of those bureaus. Time is running, time is flying. So we have to rationalize. How can you imagine that you have 3 bureaus in the same region? And we're saying we should have the golden rules for management. And whenever we want to touch one of the bureaus, it's a political matter. It's useless, but it is a political matter. The country that is hosting the bureau is saying, you won't touch it. It has to change. It needs leadership. It needs understanding, negotiation, but it has to change. If you want to change things, we have to be frank and outspoken. We have to be, really tough when it comes to be tough, and lean when it comes to we have to do it. We have to do it.
Yes, sir, your time is up. And now, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of round 4. If you are just joining us, we've had 4 rounds, and each of them has touched on a thematic area. And now we will go for a quick break. When we come back, the candidates each have 2 minutes to share their closing remarks.
Mesdames et messieurs, nous remercions bien.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank our dear candidates for having responded to the last question of the 4th round of this Mjadala Afrika leadership debate of the African Union. Thank you very much for staying with us. We'll come back in a few minutes. We're going to take another short break. And after the break, each candidate will have 2 minutes to make their closing remarks. See you in a short while.
telling people to sit down because we are 22 seconds.
Ladies and 3, 4, 5. Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and 3, 2. Hello. 1, 2.
Mesdames et messieurs, merci beaucoup.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming back with us. So we're going to reconvene in a few minutes for the closure of the Mjadala Afrika leadership debate of the African Union. Thank you very much for having joined us this evening.
Last part of our programming this evening. Please take your seats. Thank you. May we assemble all our candidates, please. As we proceed into the last part of our debate today, Mjadala Afrika Leadership Debate 2024. And we want to say a special thank you to our audience around the world. The questions you sent truly informed the kinds of questions that we then asked our panel here. And we are very happy that you were very involved. It goes to show that indeed the Africa we want is in your hands and that you are actively involved in doing this together. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are back to our last session. My name is Anita Erskine, and I'm joined here by my colleague Fatima Sharif, who is our French speaker.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Anita. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us for this final lap of the Mjadala Afrika Leadership Debate of the African Union. You have listened during the debate, the questions that were raised, the answers that were given by the different candidates, and we're coming to the end of the debate. And so, Anita, we're going to listen to the closing remarks to the candidates. So thank you very much, Fatima.
Candidates, you each have 2 minutes to share your closing remarks, or better still, your last words. We will start this round with His Excellency Raila Odinga.
Thank you. I am delighted to have had the opportunity to address our people of Africa. And as I've said, I am ready to work for Africa. There are reforms that will be necessary so that AU can work more effectively. One of these reforms will be financial reforms, so that we are able to bring in the African private sector into the funding. I mentioned also the issue of sovereign funds that we can use. We can create a fund that will enable AU to do all its work. Then there's issue of remitting. I will work to ensure that all the countries could pay their dues to the Union. This is what happens in the European Union, and that's why European Union is able to even fund African Union. It's a shame. If we can be able to fund this organization out of our own resources on the continent. And this is what I'm going to try to do. And I said that I am ready on day one when I'm appointed. I will not need any kind of induction. I'm ready to work for the continent, and I will offer my best. The days of Africa have come. The African lion will begin to roar and tell its Asian tiger counterpart and the European bear and the American jaguar that this is going to be Africa's millennium. the 2000.
Dear candidate, I'm really sorry to interrupt you once again, but these are the rules of the debate. Nous allons maintenant, mesdames et
We are going now, ladies and gentlemen, give 2 minutes to the candidate of Djibouti closing remarks.
Thank you so much, and let me speak in Arabic. I would like to say that if I will be elected as the chair of the African Union Commission, I will be up to your aspirations and I will defend the interest of our continent, and I will work diligently to defend our continent, and with the full modesty, I think that I deserve it.
Je souhaite à nos pays, à nos peuples africains.
So I wish for our African people, our countries, a very happy 2025.
Tonight, I wish to all African nations and citizens all the best. Thank you for your support.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And now, 2 minutes for you, His Excellency Richard J. Randemandrato.
En 2025,
in 2025, there will be a new team that will be leading for 4 years. Will be leading the African Union Commission for 4 years, and there shall be 8 high-level public servants like most of us, and we shall be the ones to continue with the reforms. We shall be a united team, a team that will have the team spirit to continue in the implementation of the 10-year plan of Agenda 2063. I do regret that this evening we're not able to handle subjects that are so urgent because we did not have enough time. Issues such as public health, the debt, issues of financing and financial institutions of the African Union, questions that have to do with the participation of the civil society and the diaspora, the questions that are linked to information and digital technology. I'm sorry we didn't have time to deal with those issues, but on we shall have other opportunities, and I shall be able to make my modest contribution. Like in public sport, there have to be players, and there have to be those who choose, who select the players, those who select the heads of state. It is up to them to select the team that will lead the African Union Commission for their need. We need a leader. Men and women need a leader, and I hope that in 2025, the wisdom of heads of state and government will balance the team that will win, so that the Africa that we want can continue to win the battle for sustainable development. Thank you. Thank you very much for these closing remarks that have been made by the different candidates.
Candidates, ladies and gentlemen, please, another round of applause for our esteemed candidates. Tonight, we have heard from His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Foreign Affairs Minister Djibouti. We've also heard from His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga, former Prime Minister of Kenya. We've also heard from His Excellency Richard J. Randemandrato, who is the former Foreign Affairs Minister of Madagascar. Each one of our candidates has done an exceptional job talking about the thematic areas that were set before them. We've talked about advancing economic integration. We've talked about promoting peace and security as well as democracy, Africa's place in global affairs, and reforming the African Union amongst many. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute honor bringing you Mjadala Afrika Leadership Debate 2024.
Merci infiniment.
Thank you very much, Anisha. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the Mjadala Leadership Debate, direct streamed line from the headquarters of the African Union in Addis Ababa. We were delighted to have you with us for the moderation of this debate. Of course, we wish the different candidates all the very best. The election of the new chairperson will take place at the level of the African Union Commission. It will take place in February next year, and thank you to all of you for having been with us, and have a good evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, the cocktail at the presidential lobby will now begin. You're invited to the presidential lobby for the cocktails. Please kindly make your way to the presidential lobby where we will hold a cocktail. Thank you very much.
Sikia, ni juicy, flavor zote tamu tena fruity. Are you bored? Kuna vitu Ayaya, kituka na shika yami na flow kama maji tena fruity. Are you bored? Kuna vitu moja ni tamu kama sali. Ni juicy, flavor zote tamu tena fruity. Are you bored? Kuna vitu zinakuudhi, sijali my bro, hebu kama taka juicy. Ni juicy, flavor zote tamu tena fruity. Are you bored? Kuna vitu zinakuudhi, sijali my bro, hebu kama taka juicy juni.
Every day is a sunscreen day. Antelios UV Mune 400, La Roche-Posay.